Okay. 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 So this episode pretty much speeds through the remainder of the Mildean arc and Zhao Mei's tournament. But the one fight I need to talk about most of all is Homura fighting the duplicate of her master, the fourth Starshine Valkyrie unit, as well as the backstory of how Homura met her. Because when I first read this in the manga, I was, for lack of a better term, clueless, without even the slightest sense of self-awareness for what Mashima's intent was with not only this side quest, but this fight specifically. And by the time I had learned what had happened to Valkyrie, it forever cast this moment in a much more somber light to me. Like, I'm not joking when I say now, to this day, I can no longer look at this fight between Homura and Valkyrie's duplicate in the manga anymore without at least my throat clenching up. And the same thing happened to me here with this episode. In fact, now granted, I do wish that there was a little bit of more of a space to just kind of let everything soak in the beginning, but at the same time, it was great. That was done pretty great. Like first, and this is the first time you hear me compliment the soundtrack in the episode, but the music, while a little sinister, was strangely on point as well. And the thing is, it's kind of hard to say more without going into full spoilers. But let's just say that for as cruel as Zhao Mei might have been for having Homura fight her master in any form, she she pretty much did Homura like the greatest kindness imaginable by just reuniting her with Valkyrie in this moment. While at the same time, weirdly enough, also just by having her fight this duplicate, it also kind of laid the groundwork for what Homura will become in the future as well. But yeah, if you couldn't tell, I'm I am so not emotionally ready for Sanjul, like at all, at all. I'm just not. I mean, it's I mean, maybe I'm kind of not even. I mean, like to anyone who's read who's watched the ending, I guess you already know what's coming. But it's like, yeah, I'm just not ready. Okay. Um, I guess moving on to a much lighter topic though, even though I'm personally still a little hit and miss on how a lot of the other fights were choreographed, like the one choreographed, I do see them and this whole tournament in a slightly different context. And to understand what these fights mean, you just need to remember what Zhao Mei is. She's a fortune teller. She's seen far into the future, so she knows the important struggles and fights and conflicts the Eden Zero crew are bound for. So while these opponents weren't that strong by fighting them, she in some ways she's also prepared the crew to fight in order to fight similar stronger opponents that they are going to face when they do get to Sunjul. Like Sunjul, which is like pretty much right around the corner, not too far off into the future. And yeah, I guess we should also talk about Jiamei's little emotional tick of being horny for battle, which kind of threw me off a lot when reading the manga, but in context of what I know now, it is a nice comedic bit to balance out the more somber undertones of the episode when we get to the Homura and Valkyrie fight. Maybe a little overplayed of him being critical, but nowadays I think it's probably much more poking fun at just the idea of tournament arcs. And one thing that's definitely clear to me as well from revisiting this arc is that he definitely took inspiration from the fortune teller Baba saga and just put his own twist on that. Like I said that once before, but it's definitely clear here. Um, with that said, Jame gives a lot of little interesting nuggets of information to us in this episode, but a couple of the biggest to keep in mind right now is how she does this. She can give a very general way of predicting the future, but also recognizes that there are still multiple different outcomes to just a single future as well, and it's probably a ways off, but keep this little nugget of information in mind for season two, because that's where the crux of where what she said in a previous episode is of time meaning very little will start to like take hold of the story. Like just that whole Zhao Mei basically introduced the concept of multiversality in this episode, believe it or not. Of course, the other thing she says is she was disappointed at not being able to see Rebecca's ether gear. And this was in the manga too, so you're not being spoiled on anything, but it does definitely set the stage that Rebecca has already awakened an ether gear. It's just the proper conditions haven't been met for her to willingly activate it. Sunjul being that point where it is more than likely to happen. Speaking of Sunjul, though, I'm a little mixed on the anime's interpretation of the planet, because on one hand, you already know my thoughts on them going this more realistic, standard spherical route, but on the other hand, I do like how they compensated by having this giant ring of gemstones circling around the planet. And I do have to admit, it is a clever way of having your cake and eating it too, while also just giving us a really cool visual. Albeit maybe a little excessive, but I guess if you're going to go the simpler route, this is the best way to do it. Now, one of the other big things to talk about, though, getting back to Zhao Mei, is we learned that Zhao Mei obtained her power from Mother, but in exchange lost her knowledge of her location. So this is a pretty heavy plot reveal that pretty much anyone who makes... So it reveals to us that pretty much anyone who makes a wish to Mother loses their memories of having met her, or even the route they took to find her. And this is one of those things where it is a little convenient to keep the plot going, but it shows that there is, for lack of a better term, an equivalent exchange to Mother's power. You can make a wish to her, but in return you have to give up your memory of the path you took to get there, which in some ways kind of explains why Shiki which in some ways explains a very interesting moment from very early on in the episode. When we get that moment of Shiki just looking at the hologram of Mother and saying, "I think I've met her." This is where this is starting to come back into play a little bit, because it shows he has actually met Mother, but at the time he probably had his memory erased of meeting her. And you can guess who he was probably with at the time that he met her. Yeah, Ziggy. Ziggy has met Mother. It's interesting how revisiting all these events has just kind of really put perspective on the story, really put perspective on things I didn't really notice in the story way back when. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I've got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share this around, guys. Oh, and before I forget, I know I was talking about the anime, but Mashima, again, fuck you, dude. Fuck you. Bye.